Hi, this is Dorie Clark. I am here on behalf of Newsweek with our weekly interview show, Better. And I am so happy to have our special guest for the week, Erica Keswin. Erica is the author of the new book, Rituals Roadmap. Erica, it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Awesome. Well, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. And I also want to say hi to the great people who are tuning in to join us live. Please type your name into the chat box and let us know where you're calling in from. We want to see you, and we would love to say hello to you and to take your questions for Erica as well about this hot topic. So, Erica, a question that I have for you about all of this. I know you have gotten, you've just launched your book, Rituals Roadmap. You've gotten a lot of great press about it. You've been on MSNBC. You're featured in the New York Post. It's wonderful. And there seems to be a lot of interest. I would say probably an especial amount of interest about the concept of rituals now that we are in this crazy COVID environment. I certainly am perceiving that a lot of people are thinking more deeply about the power of ritual. Have you sensed that? And if so, why is it that rituals are something that is so popular or feels so necessary during this time?
I am seeing it 100%. I'm seeing it for myself. I'm seeing it for my family. I'm seeing it at work. And there's a lot of science around rituals that show us why. The first is that rituals ground us and they bring some order out of chaos. And many people have felt really chaotic during these very turbulent times. Rituals give us what I call the 3 Ps. They give us a sense of psychological safety and belonging. They give us an opportunity to connect back to purpose and our values. And you add those 2 Ps together and you get the 3rd P, which is performance. That when we have rituals in our lives, our cortisol, our stress goes down, our oxytocin, that feel-good hormone in our bodies goes up, and we feel better, we feel safer, we feel more connected. And at work, what we find is that when you work for an organization where you're connected to purpose and values, collaboration goes up, productivity goes up. So all around, I would say it's a really good thing, and it's a really good thing, especially now.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Erica. Thank you. So specifically at work, I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about what rituals at work actually look like? Like what are some examples if someone is a team leader, if they are an executive in an organization, they say, yes, I am bought in to this concept. What are some types of rituals that people could actually bring to their day-to-day at work?
Yeah, I agree. Some people said this almost felt like an oxymoron. Well, what do you mean rituals at work? It seems so much more personal. So in one of the chapters in the book, I call it Design Your Own Roadmap. And from the work perspective, for those listening, think about the employee experience and where all these different stops on the roadmap where you could have opportunities for rituals, starting with how you recruit people, how you onboard. You only get one chance to make a first impression. So how do you use your values to create rituals around onboarding? Rituals around meetings. We are all in meetings a lot these days, virtually. Beginnings and endings of meetings, of projects are great opportunities for rituals. Taking a break, it's actually a really funny chapter in the book called the no smoke break. We used to have these smoke breaks. I never smoked, for the record, but that's where you got together and you bonded and you were also productive, whether you realized it or not. So those are opportunities. And I think celebrating milestones right now, celebrating people's birthdays and anniversaries, celebrating the small wins every week. So that's sort of the arc of the employee experience. And what I would urge leaders to do, and I'm happy to share some of my favorite examples, but think about rituals that you had before COVID and how you can maintain them. But it's also an opportunity to get creative and think about new ones because the world is very different.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Erica. Thank you very much for that. And I also just wanted to say hello to some of the great folks who are tuning in to join us. Thanks for being here. We have Stacy from St. Petersburg, Monica from Dallas. We have Carlos from Colombia. We have Kendra from Silver Spring, Adrian from Stanton, Virginia, Naoki from Petersburg, Virginia, Rosinda from Mexico. Oh my gosh, we have Lila from Cairo, Talal from England, and Katie from New York metro region, Skip from Kansas. I'm so glad glad to see all of you guys here. Thank you for joining us and joining the conversation. And if you are enjoying this, please feel free to hit the like button, hit the share button so that people can benefit from Erica's insights. So Erica, the conversation about rituals is really important. I'm sure we're going to be returning to it, but I wanted to mention you have a previous book. Your first book that came out was called Bring Your Human to Work. That also is a topic that, especially during COVID, people have been focusing on a lot. What does it actually mean?
Here it is. I actually happen to have it right next to me.
That is shocking that you have a prop. That's amazing. Well done. So Bring Your Human to Work. What does that actually mean? And how do we manifest that in our day-to-day lives professionally?
So, so glad you asked about Bring Your Human to Work, because I've been doing many talks these days called Bring Your Human to Work When You Can't Go to Work, which is really hard right now, trying to bring your full self, especially when you're over the screen. And one of the things that I'm seeing that if leaders are able to do, it's having a huge impact on employee engagement and culture right now. You know, this new normal has become normal. We are in month 11 and employee engagement's pretty low. It's hard for people. You know, one of the most recent things that happened, all of a sudden it's the new year, it's 2021, yet nothing really changed. And so people's moods are up and down. People are isolated, they're lonely. It's really hard. So what can leaders do? And I think there's never been a more important time to bring your human to work. So what does that mean? What does it look like? What does it feel like? If you're a leader and you're listening to this, what I would urge you to think about is when you're running a meeting, when you're doing an all hands, how can you bring yourself? How can you even be vulnerable? Like the vulnerable piece is almost the North Star. You know, I know you have a cat, I have a dog running around in here. So you know, before I feel like we used to hide these things. If you had a young kid, you know, God forbid your kid started crying. Now we're seeing into each other's homes, you know, for better or for worse. And people are seeing the good, bad, and the ugly. And I think that from a human perspective, from a business perspective, I think it's about time, quite frankly, to not be in a position where checking our real self at the door. And so if you're a leader, look, you might be listening to me and think, oh, I'm not so comfortable with that. But I'm telling you that it makes a huge difference that many young people, I mean, I live in New York City, many people here are living in teeny little spaces, their desk and their bed is in the same room. And they think that their manager, their leader, their boss, you know, nothing bad's going on in their life. Like they've got it all figured out. And we all know that that's not true. This pandemic is impacting all of us in very different and personal ways. So if you have a comfort level, and I would say try it, you know, I don't need a 180, you know, incrementally, you know, try pieces of this about sharing when you didn't have the most perfect day. Now, why is that important from a business perspective? You know, it's an important question. Let's say I have a team of 7 or 8 people and I need them to be open and honest with me about what's going on in their lives. Why? Because we have 3 things due for our clients that week. And they might not be open to sharing with me what's really going on. And so if I can lead by example and share that the good and the bad, you're much more likely to get the people on your team to share as well. So Dorie, if you show up and say, you know, I'm really having a bad day, I can say, you know what, I'm going to get you some help on a project, or maybe I'll give this project to someone else. So the last thing that I want to share, just tying this great question you asked to rituals, is that many leaders are using rituals as a tool to bring their human and everybody else's human to this meeting, to this moment. So how? Let's have a check-in. One CEO shared with me that everybody goes around and will say one adjective that to describe how they're doing in that moment. Or another CEO shared that in his team, people just say red light, you know, red, yellow, or green. And if you're showing up as red, you know, whoa, I know that something's going on and I can support you better as a person, but also in your work.
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
It was a long answer. I apologize, but you know, just to bring it full circle.
A long answer, but a good answer. And I mean, it was good. It gave me time to bring my human to work because as you can probably see, the sun decided to attack me, and so I had to move my computer and my microphone. So we're all good now. But we had a question come in, and feel free, everybody who's tuning in, ask your questions for the amazing Erica Keswin. Erica is, of course, the author of the new book, Rituals Roadmap. But a great question came in from Nicola, who is joining us from Germany, and she says, I love this. She said, Erica, could you describe some concrete rituals for Zoom or video conferences? Please. I think people need some help with this out here, Erica. What should we be thinking about? What could be good rituals that we can be thinking about and using?
Yeah. So even the one that I just mentioned, this going around really quickly, sort of rapid fire, I think all of us have had these checking in since the beginning of the pandemic. In the beginning of the pandemic, it was taking up 40 minutes of a 45-minute meeting. Then it was taking up 20 minutes. Now we have work to get done. So these things really can be these rapid fire ways of checking in pretty quickly. The other one that I'll share is, and I was a little cynical, I'll say, Nicola, that when I heard this ritual, I thought, really? Like another Zoom? But not every Zoom is created equal. And when you're thinking about your rituals, especially digital ones, the ones that are the most sticky, that are really working, are aligned to your company values, your values as a leader. And it's a way to get the values, cheesy as this sounds, off the walls and into the halls. So Udemy, the online learning company, has a lot of rituals around lunch, eating together. And in my book, I have a chapter on meetings and I have a chapter on eatings, because eatings is a very, it's a ritual that we do in our lives, personally and professionally. So when they were in person, they had a ritual called lunch roulette, where everybody could opt in. The company paid for lunch. They'd go out to a restaurant. So no can do at the moment. So the head of human resources, Cara Alamano, shared with me that they decided to continue that ritual digitally. And I was a little cynical, like, really, people want to have yet another lunch, yet another Zoom. But not all Zooms are created equal. So at Udemy, people can opt in to have lunch, and the company sends everybody a gift card, and you can support a local business in your neighborhood and order in, and everybody comes and they're having this conversation. What makes it different is it goes back to why rituals can be magical. You're there for a purpose, and your purpose, you're not working on a project. Your purpose is around connecting with other people in the organization or other people on your team, having lunch that, presumably the company can pay for. If not, I think that's okay too. But it's linking it back to, why we like to work at the company, why we remember that we like our teammates, and linking it back to a ritual or starting a new ritual can often make it feel different than just another meeting.
Fantastic, Erica. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just wanted to also give a shout out to some of the folks who have tuned in and joined us in the immediate recent past. We have Petra from Romania. We have Vicky from Boston, Gustavo from Argentina. We have Todd from our past guest, Todd Churches from New York City.
Hey, Todd.
Yes, we have Anna from Vancouver, Annette from SoCal, Marguerite from Toronto. We have friends here from Elizabeth from Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. We have someone from Montreal, Stephen from New York, Michael from New York, Diane from Cleveland. We're so glad to have all of you guys here. Please feel free to type your questions for Erica into the chat box. And also, if you're getting any tips or insights, if there's something that you are going to act on or that you want to remember and help share your knowledge with the other folks who are tuned in here, type it into the chat box so we can all learn together. So this is a great conversation. Erica, a question I have for you, obviously, and I know you have talked about this, and so I'm hoping that we can hear a little bit more about your coffee habits. But the world wants to know, what are your rituals? How do you think about this in your own life?
I do think about it a lot in my own life, and I'll share the coffee ritual because I think it's a good way to articulate the difference almost between a ritual and a habit, or a ritual and a routine. So, people often say, what's the difference? And the short version of that is that a ritual is something where there is more intention, there is more meaning. So I would say that my coffee ritual is about much more than the caffeine. So my ritual is that I love Starbucks. I'm not a brand ambassador, although I would be if they asked me. But it's something about I like soy milk, and it's a little bit sweet. It's vanilla, and it just makes me very happy. So for many, many years, I have been going to Starbucks. And as an aside, Bring Your Human to Work, the title was inspired by Ashley Peterson, my Starbucks barista, who I got to know with my daily visits. So I used to go into Starbucks. I would sit in the store, can't wait for the day when we can do that again. And I would get my coffee and I would drink it, and I would have my moleskin notebook, and I would be doing my work and feel like Wonder Woman, very productive. And then one day I realized that I wasn't tasting the coffee, and it kind of bummed me out because I really like it. And sometimes even—
And to be clear, it's not because you had COVID.
No, I did not. No, correct. I did not. I have not had COVID.
And then I couldn't smell.
No,
we have to clarify these days.
That's really good, Dorie. I hadn't thought of that. I wasn't tasting it because I was drinking it so fast and I was multitasking, and I missed it because I'll admit this. Like sometimes before I go to bed at night, I think about how excited I am for my coffee the next day. So in that moment, there was this almost transition from saying, you know what, I am making this coffee experience a ritual. So what do I do now? I get it. I feel the heat on my hands. I pause. It's a moment for me to pause in the day in my crazy Manhattan life. I take a few deep breaths. I smell it. I taste it, and I experience it. And it was really it really went from transforming what was this routine box check to something much more meaningful. And back to what we talked about earlier, it grounds me. It gives me some order out of chaos. I'm able to connect in that moment to myself. So that's a ritual I technically could live without it, but it really brings a lot of joy and meaning to my day. With my kids and my family, we have Taco Tuesday. That's a big family ritual of ours, and Shabbat on Friday really are the three that ground me in the beginning of the week, the beginning of the day, and also the end of the week.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Just want to say hi to Usman, who joined us, Stamatis from Switzerland. We have Lena from Denmark, Lynn from Dallas. Great to have you guys here. And Erica, we had a comment come in. I'll just put this up on the screen from Omar. He says, I love this. It makes me think of the HBR article on becoming a corporate athlete. Staying focused on rituals can help us achieve that ideal performance state.
100%.
Yeah, such a great point, Omar. Thank you for sharing that. So a question actually came in, Erica, from Chris. Chris wants to know, some rituals seem to contribute to the purpose of rituals better than others. What makes some better than others? Or is it just me? What's your take on that?
So my take on it is, when I would ask people what their rituals are, some people weren't sure. Is it a ritual? Is it not a ritual? Is it connected to purpose and values? So it took me a while. But when I was writing the book and interviewing so many people on their rituals, I came up with a question that helped me help others figure out what are those sticky rituals, either in their personal lives or at work. And I'm going to give it away right now. I hope everybody reads the book, but I am going to give it away. So the question is, Chris, I can ask you, what do you do in your life that makes you feel most like you? That really connects you in that moment to your own purpose or values? Or I said it to people in companies. I asked it to the head of human resources at Chipotle. I said, when do people at Chipotle feel most Chipotle-ish, or most like a Chipotle employee? And their answer, interestingly, was like, when I asked that question, I could almost see, the light bulb, like a cartoon. And her answer to that was, at Chipotle, every day at 10:15, Chipotle actually opens at 10:30. I didn't know people wanted burritos at 10:30 in the morning, but I guess they do. And so at 10:15, before they open and they've already prepped all the food, everybody in the store sits down and has lunch together. Now it's a little bit more spread out, but it's around the table. And that's when people feel most like them. So Chris, that to me, when you think about it and when you're designing your own sort of rituals roadmap and you don't know where to start, that's a great place to start.
Really helpful, Erica. Thanks for that. And so a related question that I was curious about is, if we're thinking about incorporating more rituals into our life, obviously rituals can become really powerful because it's a thing we do regularly. It's imbued with a lot of meaning. But how do we thread the needle between having a ritual that we're doing repeatedly over time and ending up just sort of stagnating, or having it just be, oh, it's just routine? Like, how do we guard against it becoming, just one more kind of vacant thing?
Yeah, no, I think it's an important question, and I'm going to answer. I just want to say Chris did pipe back in, and it worked. So when I asked that question, she said, when I'm with my best friends and my most amazing family, I'm my most authentic self. So see, I love that. Like, that just gave me goosebumps. But Dorie, your question is so important. You can't force feed a ritual. So if someone is listening today and says, okay, I'm all about these rituals, I'm like figuring it out. Okay, team, like tomorrow we're going to have the adjective ritual, or we're going to do this red, green, and yellow thing. It might stick or it might not. Rituals can come from the top down. They can come from the bottom up. They can come from the inside out. I do think starting from a place of values, and, sometimes it's almost this awareness thing. Like for me with my coffee, I was doing it, but there wasn't an awareness that it was a ritual, until I thought about it. So, you have to kind of, it's part science and part art. And I think you can sort of feel it, that if it feels force fed, you can hear the sirens in my background. Or if you feel that people aren't, showing up, or if there are eye rolls, and you can ask people, like if you're leading a team, get feedback from people. And I do think, and I've seen it, that certain rituals can run its course and you naturally let them die out and something else might pop up. I also have instances where someone has started a ritual and they've left the company and the ritual lives on. I mean, so it can go both ways. Don't take it personally. If you feel all fired up to start some rituals and they don't stick, you will find ones that do, but they're organic. The best ones are organic and authentic and evolve over time.
Yeah, it's such a good point, Erica. I mean, in many ways, it kind of reminds me of company mentoring relationships, where the mentor relationships that stick are the ones that are organic enough that both sides feel invested and engaged. You can, of course, have a corporate mentoring program where you say, okay, well, Erica, Dorie's your mentor, or vice versa.
Right, exactly.
And it sometimes it works, and sometimes it can get it going. But really, where there's muscle is where people all feel invested themselves.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So a great question came in from Lynn, who wants to know, what if your boss or your client is overtly against rituals? Have you encountered this where people are like, no, that's ridiculous, we don't want to do that?
I mean, I have. I find bosses against a lot of this stuff. Sort of where we started, it's often perceived, as softer stuff. And I, really do believe that the soft stuff is, as I said, is the hard stuff and really important. So if you're in that instance, lead with the data. And there's so much in this book, science and data, around why this stuff actually matters. On average, employee engagement sits at around 30%. So in any company or in any team on any given day, 70% of the people on your team aren't so engaged or happy and might even be looking for a new job. That turnover is expensive. And so these kinds of things, rituals that can make us feel so connected, is directly linked to better retention and lower turnover and saving money. So I would urge, if you're trying to get a boss to come around, give examples, give the data. And, the other thing that I love about rituals, they are so accessible and can cost nothing. So my hope would be that why not give it a shot?
Yeah, that's such a good point. Thank you for that. And some great comments have come in. Adrian says, I love that. I'm very focused on establishing genuine relationships with my network. So I set aside 10 or 15 minutes of every meeting I lead to share and ask a question. So that's a great tip, Adrian. Thank you for mentioning that. So another interesting question came in from Adil, who wants to know, with such heterogeneous work teams now, can you elaborate on the importance of having a common language in order for rituals to be readily adopted? What do you do, Erica, if you work with people around the world, in different time zones, from different cultures or backgrounds? How can you create a team ritual under circumstances like that?
So I would say a couple things. The first is sort of the common language, and I'm not sure if that question referred to, literally someone speak English and, someone doesn't. But in terms of common language and getting us all on the same page, if we all work for the same company, that is the amazing power of values. Company values, that if you're trying to think about how to structure these rituals and one of your company values is collaboration or one is caring, or I just had someone on my Rob Herzog on my Instagram live this morning, one of their rituals was fun. And so one of their values, was fun. And so they built a ritual around having fun. So from a language perspective, that is the common thread in many organizations that connects the dots. In terms of everybody being all over the place in time zones, even with COVID, that's nothing new, right? We've always had global teams. I would think about rotating the time zones for these rituals. It doesn't always have to be at 3:00 in the afternoon, East Coast time, so it's the middle of the night. So I would say to do that around rituals, but I would hope that would be a practice that we would do around meetings anyway. The other thing that I would say, and it's funny that I'm saying it, 2 years ago, I never thought I would say it, as somebody who wrote a book called Bring Your Human to Work. It is all about this in person, and all of a sudden we're not in person. I would think about, thinking about rituals, leveraging different mediums of communication. They don't always have to be on Zoom, and they shouldn't always be on Zoom. So think about your rituals, maybe with your global team, once a week it's on Zoom. Maybe certain people get together on the good old fashioned phone. Maybe you leverage Slack. And everybody's taking pictures and putting pictures of what they did on the weekend or their dog or their cat. So try to be creative, and not everybody, you don't want to do it on Zoom all the time. And again, that stickiness can even be stronger when we're mixing up our mediums.
Yeah, such an important point. Thank you for that. And I just want to mention, if you are enjoying this conversation, be sure to follow Erica Keswin. Go to ericakeswin.com. You can sign up for her email list and learn more about her work, including her new book, Rituals Roadmap. And if you want to make sure that you never miss one of our weekly conversations here on Newsweek, you can go to dorieclark.com. That's me. You can sign up for my email list and make sure that you are getting email notifications. And of course, subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter, which is totally separate content. It's available at dorieclark.com/LinkedIn. So Erica, we had a really good point come in also that I think is interesting from Lynn. She wants to know, would you include rituals around diversity and inclusion for the betterment of the team? Obviously, diversity issues have really come to the forefront in the past year. There's been a lot of talk in the corporate world about it. How does ritual factor in with those topics?
I love that question. I'm so glad it's coming up. Rituals can be great for improving diversity and inclusion. And if we're not intentional, it can have the opposite effect. So what do I mean? If you're managing a team or a department and all of your rituals are around drinking, let's say, in person or now, and I think it's great, many organizations are doing virtual happy hours and, mocktails and bringing in someone to do it, which I think is great. Cocktails, make sure you have mocktails. Make sure that everything that you're doing is not around alcohol. Make sure that your rituals are not always after 5:00. Given now that we're all home, the work day has expanded. And again, I started doing this work before COVID. There's actually a chapter in Bring Your Human to Work called Playing the Long Game, which I'm so excited about your new book, Dorie, which is going to touch on this. And I can't wait. Well, that's a whole separate thing. I am so excited. It's just a great time for your new book. But we need to think about intentional work practices, intentional rituals, so that everybody feels included. So whether it's pre-COVID or especially now, what about people that are, that have their kids at home from school? What about people that have to pick up their kids from daycare when we go back to, and I guess some are still doing that now, people taking care of elderly parents. So if we're intentional, and it links back to, the global teams, maybe people have been thinking about these issues even before this. How can we have rituals that are inclusive? We start with our values, that will drive it, but we need to really think about all of the kinds of people, what they're going through in their lives, especially right now, and be aware, because if all of your rituals are at 6 o'clock at night, whatever time zone you're in, many people are not going to want to lean into that. And I would also say that thinking about rituals in your employee resource groups could be another interesting opportunity around inclusion. So one quick example, because I thought it was so cool, that in the beginning of COVID, I was doing a mastermind with a number of senior HR leaders. And one woman shared that in her company, they created new employee resource groups to help connect people dealing with very similar situations. So they had one called Party of One for people living alone. They had one, which cracked me up, which I really needed, called Marriage Therapy, which was people would all of a sudden, you're working at home with your spouse and you have one office and you're ready to go nuts. And so thinking about these issues and rituals through the lens of D&I, so important. Thank you for that important question.
Fantastic. Erica Keswin, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to all of our friends who have tuned in over the past half hour. We've been talking with Erica Keswin. She's the author of the new book, Rituals Roadmap. You can also check out her previous book, Bring Your Human to Work. You can look up and learn more at ericakeswin.com. You can, of course, also follow me and make sure you never miss one of our Thursday conversations for Newsweek by signing up for my email list at dorieclark.com. Erica Keswin, we are so happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.